All right, so let's start working up with this webinar, which is all about dynamic CRM. Now, to quickly tell you, a dynamic CRM, which is a product from Microsoft Dynamics product line, started up with very initial release 1.0, 2.0, 3, 4, 2011, 13, 15, 2016, and now the latest build from Microsoft product line is Dynamics 365 for operations. All right, so let me move next. And this particular webinar is focused on workflows, and we'll be discussing a business scenario along with the target audience for this profile. So the target audiences could be a pre-sales consultant, it could be business analyst, it could be a technical developer, a person who's involving in designing the business processes and automating them through workflows and all other automation technologies. So let's talk about a little bit when it comes to workflows, what it is in dynamic CRM. So workflows are the prime source of automation when we talk about dynamic CRM. And it's not only workflows, we also have dialogues over there. We also have actions over there. So the concept of workflows were available from the very initial release of Dynamic CRM, and then in 2011 we introduced dialogues as well, which could be the automation with the help of user interaction. And then starting from 2013 we started implementing actions as well, which could be the part of your automation process. Today's architecture or today's webinar is more on workflows. We are discussing workflows as a source of business process automation. So, um, what generally a business process is, or how we can pretty much automate that. Let's take an example. You may have lots of business processes coming into picture. It might be towards your sales, it might be towards your marketing, it might be towards your customer service as far as CRM is concerned. Or if you talk about any other integrated product like an ERP or something, it could be for your warehousing, it could be for your vendor payments, it could be for your GL automations, fixed assets and all. So when it comes to dynamic CRM, the workflows are heavily used to automate any kind of business process. And when I talk about what is a business process, let's start working towards the sales. Somebody kicks in, you got an inquiry, and you're converting them to leads. Now, as soon as the leads are created in the system, some procedures should happen. Or as soon as you're converting them to opportunities, some quotations needs to be presented, some appointments needs to be taken, and all of these things can be automated when we talk about the sales process. As far as the marketing is concerned, we can automate the marketing lists, so we can get them by our queries, we can generate bulk emails, bulk SMSs, we can get the templates done, we can have all those automations coming into the picture. So any kind of business process, whether it's a customer service, as soon as somebody registers a case, based on the case type, I should be considering the follow-up tasks accordingly, and system should do that automatically for me. Any kind of feedback collection system. So if we are delivering a kind of webinar today, what's going to be the feedback? Or if a post sales service or post support, if you have done shipping a service or a product, you want to know the customer satisfaction survey, which could be automated with the help of workflows and all. So as the automation process comes in or kicks in, you first understand what the business need is, then implementing the same test and repeat. So when I say test and repeat, generically you implement that and you make sure everything's working fine, and then somebody kicks in and the business process needs to be changed. So you repeat the same process again. So it's understanding the same, implementing, testing, and repeat, and the cycle goes on and on. And that's a kind of plain and simple how we should start working up as far as a business process automation is concerned. So, as I told you earlier, this session is heavily dedicated to webinars, or pretty much on the workflows scenario. So we have a scenario in here. Let's take an example of, let's say our organization is working on sales process automation, and one of my primary tasks is automated notifications for the leads. So as far as somebody says what exactly the leads are, well, I would say a lead is just a contacted inquiry which may or may not be interested in your products or services you're offering. So what do we need to do under this? So as the requirement says, you must create a follow-up task for the lead person whenever a new lead is created into the system, or whenever a new lead is assigned to someone, the person should be notified with a follow-up task. So my business process says that whenever we create or assign a new lead, system should create a follow-up task automatically. We can consider taking follow-up from the lead and get the process moving accordingly over there. Then there is a second stage to that. So when the follow-up task is created, I want to see if we are taking follow-up on times or not. Sometimes people say, hey, if I'm not completing this task within 2 or 3 days, it should be reported to my manager. Well, that's fine. But if I'm completing that, that also should be reported to my manager automatically that the follow-up task has been completed. So that's a second stage kind of approval or a second stage kind of notification which we can generate based on that. So let's have the scenario implemented, and then we'll talk about some more scenarios which could be there as a part of workflows automation. So I'm going to my Dynamics 365 in there, and this is CRM 2016. In the same way, you can start implementing that on Dynamics 365, and we'll be taking a look of that interface just after this particular demonstration. So, well, I'm in here, and as a part of sales processes, I do have leads, everything's working, everything's fine as of now. So, I'm setting up some of the prerequisites so you understand the scenario from scratch, what exactly we are working up. So currently, if I take you to the settings area, and there I do have administration, I do have security. So if I kicks into security and I clicks on the users, that tells me currently I have only one user available over here. Well, that's what not I'm looking at. So I'll be adding a couple of new users which will help me testing the automation we are about to do. So let's go ahead, and I'm talking about users. So I'm going to Active Directory users and computers. Once again, guys, this is something you're not supposed to do as a part of your regular dynamic CRM profile. That is something system administrator needs to take care of. So as a result, you can see that we have plenty of users in there. I do have Adam over there. I have Alan Stainer over there. I do have Alicia over there. I do have lots of other users available. So let me kick in. I already have the users in my Active Directory. So I would like to create a couple of users on a salesperson profile. They'll be taking care of the leads and all. So let's have a look. Okay, so I'm saying the new users I'm going to create would be the member of my salesperson role. Now, no need to say that the window which is appeared in here that describes the security roles which are available out of the box in Dynamics CRM or Dynamics 365. Now, it's just a matter of if you want to create custom security roles, you can always do that. Well, that's fine. Let me click next. And it's going to be a read-write user, and the license type, whatever you specify in there, and then how they'll be using their emails via Outlook or via server-side synchronization or via email router. Well, Outlook's fine. I'm saying next. I'm selecting the users from Contoso domain. That's the domain I'm holding up. I'm clicking in here, and this is going to bring me all the users where I can import them. So let me say, I'm saying it's going to be Alan, and then it's gonna be Alicia. So I'm having these two users imported. Now the question is, they will be the CRM users so they can access CRM, correct? And what they will be accessing, well, depends whatever you have in the salesperson's security role. So let me create these new users which will help me implementing what I was supposed to do, what we discussed in the scenario. Okay, that's fine. So I got Alicia. If I just open it up, just to show you, she's the member of salesperson security role, and the username we are using is Alicia T. That's fine. Apart from that, if I kicks into users again, and if you take a look on Alan Brewer, so Alan B is the username, and that's a regional sales manager currently holding salesperson profile. That's fine. So I have three different users in there. Now the question comes up, if I coming back to the scenario, I need to implement an automated process where whenever a lead gets created, a follow-up task should be there. But there are a couple of questions which we should discuss before getting into the practical exposure, and that's pretty much what needs to be done and what that exactly means. So somebody says, okay, when the leads get created, so I'm aware about one thing, that I need to act when somebody creates a lead or somebody assigns a lead. Okay, so that's pretty much the event when my automation will trigger. Okay, after that, we talk about what needs to be done. Well, I'm talking about a follow-up task. Now, when I talk about follow-up task, that's an entity, that's a kind of record which needs to be created as a part of automation process. Now the question comes, what about this follow-up task? So if I say the duration, let's take an example of 2 days. People will be getting 2 days to get this completed. And the question says, who is going to have this follow-up task? There might be lots of answers to that question. So somebody may say, whenever I create a lead, there is a person who's supposed to take the follow-up, and that person should see that follow-up task with them. Another situation says, well, I don't care because I don't have a centralized person for that. So what I would like to do is whoever is creating a lead in the system, the same person is responsible for the follow-up task. And as a part of sales management, well, that makes a lot of sense because the person who's creating the lead has already interacted with the lead, and that makes more sense. That person should be doing the follow-up apart from anybody else. So let's take a look and let's start working with as far as this follow-up task is concerned. So the quick decision over there, the owner of the follow-up task will always be the owner of the lead. So whoever is currently the owner of the lead will be the owner of the follow-up task as well. So that's what I was telling you. When you talk about automation, you should first understand, then you implement, test, and repeat. So now we know that a lead, whenever a lead is getting created or assigned, I would like to create a follow-up task with this particular duration and whomsoever is the owner of the lead. So when the understanding makes it clear, I'm going to design that particular thing. So I'm clicking in here on the settings area. You'll see processes right across. And as I was telling you that a processes could be anything. It could be an action, it could be a dialogue, it could be a workflow, a traditional workflow or a real-time workflow and whatsoever. So let me click new over there. And it is asking me what's going to be the name of the process. So let's say it's going to be lead notification. Lead notification workflow is what I would like to call it. The category is going to be, well, it's going to be a workflow because today's webinar is more focused on workflows. What is the entity? So that is where we decide on which is my primary entity. So you might be thinking we have two entities to be concerned of. One is a lead, another one is a task, a follow-up task. But a follow-up task will always be created only when we are creating a lead or assigning a lead. So my primary entity which is triggering the automation is lead. For that, I'm going down and I'm selecting lead over there. And well, Of course, it could be an automated workflow, it could be an on-demand workflow. We'll be discussing that. So I'm considering a new blank process. I can always use a child process over there. And a new thing which you'll start noticing from CRM 2013 is this checkbox, which talks about run this workflow in background. So what does it mean? That it always runs in the background, and apart from that, whenever we create the jobs and all, we can always see that in system processes. So if I click on OK over there, I'm going to create a blank process. Sometimes you get this Windows pop-up blocks. You can always click over here and say allow pop-ups. And if I open it up, currently my process is in draft stage. And this is my workflow designer, what I used to call it. Now the question comes up that we may have two categories of workflows. A workflow which we can start designing and start working without even writing a single line of code. That's the one which we are doing. And a second thing, we can have a custom workflow activity which is heavily focused on code writing with C#, creating custom workflow activities, registering that using registration tool, and getting it over here. Well, that's not part of today's demonstration. That is something we call SDK, Software Development Kit. So let's have what we have today as a part of out-of-the-box workflow designer. So it says run in the background. That's fine. When I say as an on-demand process, well, that makes it a little bit more a kind of user-driven workflow. So as if you're selecting that your workflow to be as an on-demand process, what does it mean? You have configured a workflow, it will trigger, but it won't be triggering automatically. You need someone who will call that workflow as an on-demand process. Well, I don't want that to happen in this one. As a child process says, if I'm designing this business piece or the process workflow, and that is something I would like to reuse that at multiple places, I can design it as a child process and people can start using it multiple places all the time. Now, the third one is automatically delete completed workflow jobs to save disk space. Well, this is important and that's a new option as well. So I can always see my workflow history in the system jobs, but I rather want to get them deleted or archived once it's completed to save the disk space if you want. If not, click in here and the jobs will persist in the system jobs. Okay. Now let's talk about the segment which is on the right hand side over there. So I'm saying an entity and a category lead in a workflow and they are grayed out, so it's clear we cannot change them. If it is by mistake you selected a wrong entity or a wrong category, the only way to do that is, well, delete this active process, draft process, delete this, and then create a new process with the correct entity and category. That's fine. The next in the segment, it talks about scope, and this is quite important. This is applicable also when you're designing the security, and this is also applicable when we are working up with workflows and business processes. So it says user, the business unit, the parent child BU, and the organization. Well, what exactly does it mean and how do we start working with that as a part of when I talk about business processes and all? So, to better understand that, let's have a look when we talk about the business architecture or a business organization hierarchy. So, I may have my main department and then I have multiple departments over there. Now, the question comes up, it could be HR, it could be IT, it could be sales, customer service, and all. And followed by that, I may have multiple departments over there as well. Now, the question comes up, uh, that where exactly that's going to be working up. So just to let you know, when I talk about multiple things over there, my organization hierarchy could be driven on departments. It could also be deriving on the business process functions like consulting, implementing infrastructure hostings whatsoever. It could also be categorizing itself by the geographical location. I have Contoso Asia, Contoso Europe, Contoso North America, followed by countries and states thereafter, or I can have an hybrid approach. So mixing all them together. But what's important to me is that every single node, whatever we are talking about in here in this particular example, every single node is a business unit. Okay, that's fine. That makes sense. Now the question comes up, if I as a user works it over here, so if a user is working over here and I'm defining the scope as a user, that means the business process automation I'm about to trigger will always gets executed for myself only, for nobody else. So the person who designed that business process or the person who's working with that business process will be the only affected user. Well, that's fine. If I want, I have a department with me, and let's take an example that that particular department belongs to consulting. So if I say it's gonna be consulting, and what I want, whatever business process automation I'm deriving, that should be implemented or that should be applicable to the whole consulting section. So if it is for the whole consulting, I can define it at the department level or at the BU level, at the business unit level. What does this means? That the process I'm about to trigger will be for the entire business unit. Well, that means this particular business unit and all their users. So if this particular department is having 20 different users, all those users are going to be affected by this particular process. Whereas if I talk about a third situation, I'm saying whatever I'm about to trigger will be affected for this particular department and all of their child departments as well. So in that case, if I'm having 20 users over there, I'm having 5 users over there, I'm having 3 users over there, and I'm having 10 users over there. So it's going to be 38 total number of users in queues which will be affected from this particular business process. And if I say whatever I'm about to do will be affected for the entire organization, wherever somebody creates or assigns a lead, system should trigger that particular business process flow. That is something we can get that achieved with the help of the organization level. So that's exactly what I was talking about, having these 4 levels all together. So uh, it depends, guys. Now the question comes, which one we should select? Can we do this? Can we do this? Yes, of course you can do whatever you want. But the question is, what should be done? That depends on the business process, how good we are understanding that. So to give you a small example of that, for this particular webinar, you guys must have registered by filling up a form. And what that form was doing, as soon as you clicks on that form, it was creating a lead into our CRM, and then automatically it was triggering an email. But to tell you, we are not generating leads just for webinars. We are doing it for plenty of other things as well. And they are on different departments, of course. So we have a lead notification system that is different for each department. So in that case, we have triggered the process at the BU level, at the business unit level. But for this particular demonstration, let's say anybody creates a lead or assigns a lead should be affected from that. So I'll select organization as the scope. Now, then I'm seeing these 5 checkboxes down there, starts when, and this is the deciding factor, whether it's going to be an automated workflow or a user-driven workflow. So when I say it's going to be an automated, if any single checkbox from these 5 is selected, that is going to be an automated workflow. And as the name suggests, a record is created will trigger whenever you create a new lead. Then somebody says a record is assigned. Well, these are the 2 conditions which we are saying. If I assign a lead to somebody else, and then you can have multiple things, like if you want to trigger your workflow of any of the existing fields. Let's say if somebody changes the city, somebody changes the lead source, somebody changes the priority of the lead, somebody changes the campaign, what should happen? So I can always have those triggers as well. So for this example, as we discussed, we are considering when the lead is created or when the lead is assigned to someone. Okay, so this pretty much tells me what was the scope and the automated process what we have selected. Now, this is my workflow designer down here, and if I click on the add step over here, and these are pretty much the options which we can have out of the box without writing a single line of the code, and that talks about plenty of them. So my workflows could be based out on stages. Stage is a logical collection of steps, automated steps, which will trigger. I can check a condition. So just like if else, or if something happens, if this is true, that should happen, else if this is true, that should happen. So I can have the condition check. There could be a wait condition, and I'll be demonstrating you that. There could be parallel waits if I'm waiting for multiple branches over there. And then there are something like creating a record, updating a record, assigning a record, sending a direct email, starting a child workflow, perform some actions, change the status, stop the workflows or something. So let's have a look, guys. As my business process says, as soon as I create a lead or assign a lead, so this is what I'm categorizing as an event, and that is the event which will trigger the workflow to execute. And this is something which I'm talking about, a record. So as soon as somebody creates or assign a lead, a new record should get created. Okay, so that comes up. We should be selecting a create record option over here. And now the question comes, whatever we name it, and this is important because we'll be using it later on. So let me give it a meaningful name. I'm gonna say it's a follow-up task for lead. Okay, and what kind of record you want to create over here? Well, I'm going to create a task. So let me go in there. I'm selecting task, clicking on set properties. Now this is important again, guys. This tells me I can have dynamic fields over there. So the company says what is going to be the architecture or what's going to be the layout for this particular follow-up task. I know it's going to be for 2 days, and the owner of the lead will be the owner of the task. Now the question comes, what subject they should see as a part of their workflow triggering system. Well, you can use a generic one. If somebody says a new lead for you, and the question comes, well, new lead for you, that makes sense, but the question is, if I'm generating hundreds of leads every day, it might be difficult to identifying just by subject what we are talking about. So I can have some dynamic values over there as well. And what I would like to have, so let's have a look. I would like to print the lead name on the subject. So this is my dynamic form assistant for dynamic fields. I'm gonna say it's gonna be lead name. So let me go for lead full name. Go ahead. I'm gonna add this. I'm selecting this, clicking OK. So it's gonna add the lead name over there, and then on the description whatever you want. So let's take an example. Hi. Now, if I talk about what was the subject, I'm gonna specify the topic in there, and I'm gonna select OK. Well, this is gonna be the subject. Then I'm gonna say what was the source of the lead. I can define the source, but sometimes what happens when I talk about the lead source, it's not necessarily true that I'll always be specifying that value. So at any point of time, if my lead source is blank, what is going to be the default value? I'm going to say not available, and I click OK. So as you can see that it's going to print me the lead source, but just in case if that is not available, uh, it'll print me a text called not available if it's blank over there. I can also have lead ratings, and I can say I would like to print the rating of the lead. Let me delete the existing one, add the lead rating, clicks OK. And similarly, you can start working up with lead email address or lead phone number or whatever you want that to consider. So let's have it, and then whatsoever. Now the question comes, this template could be different, this could contain multiple fields. Well, that depends on the business logic and what the business want. Now there comes the duration. Now somebody says it's going to be 2 days. We can always say it's going to be 2 days. Well, I can always have hours and all, and I can start working with that. I can define it's going to be 2 days. That's fine. That's the duration. What next? If I'm coming down over here, I can have parameters, start date, categories, owners, and everything. Now the question comes that in the owner, there was a specific condition that the owner of the task will always be the owner of the lead. Well, that's fine. So I select in here. I can define users right from there, whatever you've added. But I don't want a static owner in terms of if I'm specifying or if I'm fixing an owner over here, the problem will be all the follow-up tasks will be redirected to that particular owner or to that particular person only, and I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna say there could be lead created by, modified by, and all, but technically you can select anything to specify an owner, but logically I should always be selecting the owner, which says who's currently the owner. It doesn't matter who created the lead, what matters is who's currently holding the lead. So in case of lead creation, it will remain same because the person who created the lead will be the owner of the task. That's fine. But in case of an assignment, well, somebody else might have created the lead which is currently with anybody else in the system. Okay, you can specify the priorities, start dates, due dates, and all. So I'm going to say that the follow-up task needs to be started um, after 1 day of leads assignment or all. So in the start date, you can start working with operators. So you can say how many months, how many days. So I'm going to say 1 day, or I'm going to say it's going to be 4 hours, and it's going to be before or after, and then you can have lead created on, modified on, closed, or whatsoever, and you can add that, and that is also going to be a dynamic value. Well, that's okay. I've associated those values in there. I'm going to say save and close. So this is a very first step of my business process flow. I just want this to be tested, and then I'll come back and I'll modify the second stage over there. So once this is done, I would like to stop the workflow as succeeded. I'm gonna say save, and make sure guys, whenever you're done completing your business process, you always activate them because they are in the draft state by default. So the status of the process says draft. I'm gonna click on activate, and I hit that up just to make sure it was organization, so it is applicable for all the users in the entire CRM tenant. Clicking close. Let's test it up, guys. As a matter of fact, if I'm looking it over here, I'm clicking on a lead, and let's say I'm creating a new lead, and I would like to call it motorbike deal, for example, and whatever you specify. So the important thing is there was a lead source as well, and there was a lead rating as well. Let's say my lead source is blank and my lead rating is hot, and I'm saving that particular record. So technically what it should do, it should trigger a business process. Well, there are various ways to identify that. One of the longer path will always be you go to sales, you go to settings, you go to system jobs, and then you start looking at by filtering, and that's pretty much a hectic one and nobody's really doing it. Another way is Well, this was the main record. So if I clicks in here, you do have the histories, the activities, the notes and all. You can notice one thing over there, that in the list of activities, there is already a task which is in there. So if I go to my activities, or I can open it from there always, you can see that. So if I go that, follow up, that's not the one which I'm looking at. There was the another one which says a new lead for you, Steve Smith. And if I clicks in, so Steve Smith was the name, and then you can see that the motorbike deal, the lead source, which is not available, the default text kicks in, the lead rating, the emails, it is 2 days. And what is important to me is, if I look at the owner down there that says CRM admin, the same user who created the lead. Well, that's fine. So it's working for me as of yet. Now the next question in the queue will be, so if I look for the existing leads, for example, so I do have, let's say, Nancy Campbell, that was created way back on somewhere around in April. And the question comes, if I assign this lead to somebody else, so let's have a look, guys. I'm gonna say I'm gonna assign this, and who's gonna be the new user? So it's gonna be somebody else, and the new user is gonna be Alicia. Let me click on assign. So that is something, I've not created lead, I've assigned a lead. So the process should trigger as usual. Now the question comes up, if I take a look on the activities, it says new lead for you. But if I take a look on the activities, that is something which is not my activity. It's not coming up on my activities. But if I rather go and task, and I see all the tasks over there, and I'm looking for a new lead creation task. So there was a one called new lead for you, Nancy Anderson. If I clicks in that, the important thing to notice is this time the owner is not myself, it's Alicia Thomber. So that's pretty much whoever is currently the owner of the lead is going to be the owner of the follow-up task as well. Well, that makes sense. So I understand that, I implement that, I test it up, everything works fine. But there is another thing now. So as the same we were discussing during our scenario discussion, that duration is going to be 2 days, but the important thing to consider as the follow-up task gets completed. So that's exactly what they were talking about. So as the follow-up task gets completed, we need to notify the manager of the lead that it's been completed or something. So what's important over there? Let's have a look. I'm taking you to the users. So it's going to be settings and security. And let me click on the list of users. And let's say Alicia. And what I'm doing with the users field, there is a manager section. So I'm going to say Alan is going to be the manager for Alicia. And by this way, I'll be able to get all the details what I require about the managers of the employee. Well, that's fine. I do have a user with the managers now. I would like to change my business process. If you want to do that, the first thing you must be doing is deactivate the process. And make sure, guys, whenever we talk about deactivate the process, that means no new triggers will happen until we activate the process again. Okay, so I'm clicking that up, and I will do that later on. So let me delete that. So it will create a follow-up task for sure. After that, I can have a check condition or something, but rather I would like to have a wait condition. What does this mean, guys? That my system will keep on waiting until the follow-up task is not completed. So let me click on the wait condition, and let me say wait for the follow-up task completion. Clicking on the condition check, and there, well, that's what I was telling you, the name should be meaningful. We'll be reusing that. So it's not related to lead at all. this is related to something which is a task, and down there you'll see a follow-up task for lead. So I'm saying the follow-up task, and as soon as I go the status reason equals, and I can select. I'm saying if it is completed or anything else or whatsoever. So as soon as the status of the task is completed, I would like to notify the manager of the person who's handling the lead. Okay, so let me go ahead and create a new record. I can always send an email or something, but I'm just doing it. So let's say update the manager, and what it could be a function, a campaign, a case, account, whatsoever. So I rather would like to have another task over there. Well, technically it should be an email, but we haven't configured email sending functionality on over here. But let's just take a look. I'm clicking on set properties, and I'll say follow up completed by whoever was the owner of the lead. Okay, so that's going to be a dynamic field, whoever was the owner of the lead, and whatever description you want to say. But this task would be for somebody, and the question comes who? Well, now let's take an example. I have the lead created by user, lead owner, whatsoever. So if you take a look example over there of the owning user, the current user who's having it, and there is a manager field, I'm adding that. So that means the manager of the person. But the problem will be, what if the manager field is blank? I can have a default value. So let me just remove it over here, and I'll say default's gonna be CRM admin. So it will always be the person's manager who's handling the lead, but just in case if manager field is blank, it's gonna be the CRM admin. That's fine. I'm gonna kick in and save and close. Well, I created that, and after this one, I'm gonna say add a task over there and stop the workflow as succeeded. I'm gonna save and close, and that was the lead notification. Clicking on activate button, I'll say activate, and let's test this approach now. So if I click on the leads over there, let me try creating something, or let's have it from somebody else. So it's gonna be localhost Contoso. Well, it's logging up from a same user, so let me key in as a different user, run as a different user. Alicia B with the password. Alright, just want to make sure the password is correct, or rather, I'll change the password for testing process. So it was Alicia Tromber, Alicia T. Alright, so it's time I should be changing that up. Okay, perfect. So let me try that now. Alright, maybe I should be logging that as that particular user. So let me kick in, and I'm gonna add a new remote desktop session. Alright, so I'm logging in as Alicia, and I will be testing that activated process. And as a matter of fact, it was activated at the organization level. So let me just open that up. And that's going to be the CRM system. Okay, perfect. And just to make sure I'm logged in as Alicia. Yeah, correct. So let's have a look, guys. I'm moving to leads option in here and I'm clicking a new one. And let me call it a motorbike bulk deal. And whatsoever the email, or let's say if I'm leaving it blank, because I haven't used any default text, it will be blank. And the lead source, let me call it's a seminar or something. If I save that up, so technically I'm creating a lead in here with the name of this, and if you want to see the activities or something, if you click on the list of activities over there, it says a new lead which is created for us, and that was a John piece. And well, that's the task. I rather want to show you something. So if I trigger on the system jobs, right over there in the list of system jobs, let me show you that. All right, so it's gonna be the system securities and the system jobs. I want to see something. Well, I would like to see all of them, but there was for John Peace, and if I open that up, you'll see the system job is saying as waiting, and it'll continue waiting. The status is waiting. The reason because the task, the follow-up task which we created, is not being completed yet. And what's the way to complete it? So let's have a look. Moving to Alicia Thomber once again, looking for the activities, and there is a new task. Well, whatever she does, she updates the field, and let's say when she says mark as complete, well, that's the point when the task has been marked as completed. Now, as a matter of fact, my status should change over there. If I go back in there, let me quickly refresh, and you say the status is succeeded. So there must be a task, follow-up was completed, and then it should be allocated to the manager. So let's have a look now. If I go to the activities section over there, and was it something on John Peace? I think so. Sorry. So let me take a look on all the tasks. And it was a follow-up completed. You can see that. So there was a follow-up completed by Alicia Thomber, and it was regarding that particular lead, and the current owner is Alan Brewer. And why Alan Brewer is the current logged in owner? Because Alan Brewer was the manager for Alicia Thomber. If it's not a manager field, by default it'll get allocated to CRM administrator. Well, pretty much when I talk about this was a small example in terms of how we can trigger an automated workflow, and on top of that, how we can start working as a business process automation stuffs in there. Just a matter of fact, if I show you a couple of more case studies over there. So let's have a look, guys. So we have somebody may have dynamics.video or something. So if somebody clicks on the upcoming webinar and you fill up this particular form and you register, so what's going to happen that it is going to come to our actual CRM system, and we'll be creating the lead over there just the way we have these things in there. And the question comes up, because I'm running on Dynamics 365, so a big change over there. If you open any of the lead which is available in there and which was created from the webinar, of course, if I open that up, now you'll see that my system will trigger some certain workflows over there, and if I take a look of what are the activities which has been performed for that over there so far, if you take a look over there, the activities, connections and all, similarly in our case as well, we have designed the processes and our process is a little bit longer than what I just demonstrated. So let's take a look if it's a practice lab or if I take a look on all the activated processes and I'm talking about lead notification. So let's have a look. So this process says it's going to be on lead and when the record is created and it's an automated workflow, and you can see that this is comparatively big with lots of conditions in there, and depending on what is the source and from where the leads is coming in, I'm going to send that welcome email accordingly differently with the business templates and all. So that's one thing. Another example could be SMS functionality. So when somebody is paying up an invoice, we are sending them SMS automatically, and which helps us getting more sophisticated automated experience over there. Another example which you might consider is whenever somebody creates an order, you just extract that order, send the details over the invoice as an attachment, just a notification, the invoice attachment. So similarly, we have lots of details which we are following, and you can automate them with the help of workflows. That's pretty much what was the scope of this particular webinar specifically. Now, for more things, guys can always keep tuning on dynamics.videos where the upcoming webinars will be uploaded. And of course, you can look for labshosting.com, which is pretty much you want to practice yourself. You can click in there, select the product you want to practice, hit buy, and as soon as you are, so this is pretty much if you want the infrastructure to practice yourself, you can do that. And once you get the login details, you click in here and you can start logging in and you can start connecting from there. That's one thing. Now I'm going to turn on the IM for everyone so we can have questions if we have any for this particular webinar. And we'll keep on sending new webinar informations over your emails, guys. So let's have the questions now.